On September 24th, 2005, Michelle Vanek hiked right into a death trap. She and her hiking partner Eric had set out into harsh terrain high up on a Colorado 14er, and when they were only a few hundred yards away from the summit, Vanek's body and her mind were failing her. She was so close to the top of this mountain, so close to achieving a goal that she had been planning for over a year, but she couldn't do it. So she split from her hiking partner, she turned around, and then was never seen again. It didn't take long before theories of foul play began to surface. Could somebody high up on the mountain have kidnapped or maybe even killed her? 2 days after she was last seen, authorities found a duffel bag discarded randomly on the mountain, and inside it contained a shotgun. Later that day, blood was found in the snow nearby. At one point, a suspicious person was discovered hiding inside a tent, and when confronted, this person refused to come out of the tent or respond at all. And at the same time that all of this was going on, Vanek's hiking partner stopped answering the authorities' questions and invoked his right to an attorney and his right to silence. Due to all of this, the disappearance of Michelle Vanek plagued the hiking community and Colorado authorities for almost 2 decades. Suspicion was high and various theories were being thrown around like crazy, but at the end of the day, nobody knew what the hell had actually happened. And then, in 2022, a discovery deep in the Colorado wilderness changed everything. This is the story of Michelle Vanek. This is definitely one of the more infamous missing hiker cases out there, and due to some recent events that we're going to cover thoroughly in this video, this case has actually started to gain attention again. If you are new to this channel, then hi, my name is Kyle. I am an experienced thru hiker with well over 5,000 miles under my belt. I've hiked the Appalachian Trail, I've hiked most of the Pacific Crest Trail, and I think that this gives me a unique perspective on these hiking mysteries. Now, if you're not new here and you're a returning viewer, let's say you found yourself watching a few of my videos now, then please consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I'm not gonna lie, my dream is to get this channel to 1 million subscribers someday. We've got a long ways to go, and I don't even know if we ever will get there, but I'm sure as hell gonna try. Michelle Vanek was a 35-year-old wife and mother of 4 who lived in Lakewood, Colorado. Vanek was a marathon runner and very fit, but she was not an experienced hiker. She was not experienced on the trail, but that was something that she aspired to change. And therefore, sometime in 2004, her and a friend named Eric began making plans to take on one of Colorado's 14ers. The 14ers are a list of 58 peaks in Colorado that are above 14,000 feet. Ambitious hikers make it a goal to climb all 58 peaks, checking them off one by one. But like I said, Vanek and Eric were only planning on starting with one 14er, and the one that they chose was called Mount of the Holy Cross. There are 2 primary routes that hikers take to reach the summit of Mount of the Holy Cross. The easiest and most popular route is the Half Moon Trail, which requires a 12-mile trek round trip with well over 5,000 feet of elevation gain. So to be clear, yes, that is the easiest route, but clearly, based on those stats, it's not an easy route. I haven't hiked this mountain before, but trust me when I say that 12 miles with that much climbing, especially at high altitude in Colorado, is very difficult, especially for someone's first time on a 14er. But as difficult as the Half Moon Trail might be, there exists an even more difficult, remote, and dangerous way to climb the mountain, and that is called the Halo Route. And both the Half Moon Trail and the Halo Route start from the exact same place at Half Moon Campground. On the morning of September 24th, 2005, right around 6:30 a.m., Eric and Vanek arrived at this very campground, intent on taking the easier of the 2 routes up the mountain. I don't know the details of their planning, obviously, but my suspicion is that they knew the Halo route would be too dangerous for them and planned on avoiding it at all costs. When they got out of the car to begin their hike, they found themselves confused. There was actually some construction going on at the trailhead at the time, and so they walked around the parking lot for a while and only saw one trail. They figured that this one trail must be the Half Moon Trail, and so they set off deeper and deeper into the Colorado wilderness, but eventually they realized that they had made a mistake. It would turn out that they were not on the Half Moon Trail and were instead on the route that they were trying to avoid from the start, the Halo route. And to make matters worse, it was too late to turn around. Now, before we go any further, I just want to stress that one of the biggest takeaways from this story is to always double check your map and GPS before starting down a trail, or maybe right after you start, just to make sure that you're going the way that you intend to. It's sad to say, but it's quite likely that the entire next series of tragic events could have been avoided if this simple mistake wasn't made. So please keep this in mind. It's a super important lesson that every hiker needs to hear, and it's for that reason that I'd like to thank Aura for sponsoring this video and making it possible in the first place. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever gone to Google, typed in your first and last name, then typed the word address, and then hit search? If you've done this before, then you know how scary the results can be. But if you haven't done this, you're gonna be surprised and probably shocked to learn that your home address, phone number, email, and tons of other personal information, private information, is publicly available online for anyone to see with just a simple Google search. Now, the people who sell your private information are called data brokers, and they make a fortune doing it. This has been something that's bugged the hell out of me for years now, and it's for that reason that I'm super excited about using Aura, which can identify these data brokers, these scumbags, and submit takedown requests, which the data brokers are legally obligated to comply with. It will get your information off of these websites. And the craziest thing is that's literally just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what Aura can do for you. All you have to do is install the Aura app, and then you're gonna get things like a VPN, antivirus, a password manager, identity theft insurance, and much more. And you're also gonna get all of that for one affordable price instead of paying for and managing all of those things individually. So if you're ready to stop letting people exploit and profit off your private information, it's just ridiculous. Head to aura.com/KyleHatesHiking or click the link at the top of the description. If you do so, you'll get a 14-day free trial and you'll be directly supporting this channel. One more time, go to aura.com/KyleHatesHiking, go get your free trial, and go see if your personal information has been compromised. Now, back to the story. Some people say that Michelle Vanek's hike was doomed from the start. Now, personally, I think that's taking it a little bit far, but these people do have their reasoning. First of all, by the time that she and Eric arrived at the trailhead, Vanek was already starting to show signs that the high altitude was affecting her. She complained about having a headache right at the start of the hike, which definitely could have been a coincidence, but due to what would happen in the hours that followed, we now know that it probably wasn't. She also didn't bring enough food or water for the hike, and she had no gear meant to help her survive overnight if something were to go wrong. After hiking about 2.5 miles, Eric and Vanek checked their map, and they realized that they had hiked out on the wrong trail and did not have enough time to turn around if they wanted to reach the top of the mountain. But despite the confusion and despite the mistake, they were still determined to summit the mountain, and so they pushed on, climbing up a series of steep switchbacks on the cutoff to the Notch Mountain Trail. At this point, it's reported that Vanek was starting to struggle, lagging behind Eric by as much as 60 feet, and that he had to actually help her keep up with him. They took a quick break, and the pair trudged on, and eventually they found themselves on the home stretch. They were only some 400 yards away from the summit. Michelle Vanek had reached her tipping point, however. At this point, she was out of water completely, really low on food, and extremely exhausted, and so she told Eric that she could not climb any further up the mountain. Now, we don't know for sure what was going on, but it's likely that she was suffering from altitude sickness. At this point, they were well over 13,000 feet in elevation, but they were so close to the summit. They were so close, and Vanek didn't want to hold her hiking partner back. She told Eric that he should just go on and reach the top of the mountain, and then the two would just meet up again on the way down. Eric was apparently hesitant to do this, and he actually offered to just turn around and hike down with Vanek, but she must have felt bad, and she insisted that Eric continue on to the top. And so Eric instructed her to head across a boulder field on the west side of the peak so that she could connect with the Half Moon Trail, which once again is that easier trail down that they were intending on going up in the first place. Eric would continue on and go tag the summit quickly, and then he would turn around and meet her on the trail down. He gave her some extra energy gels that he had on him, and then they went their separate ways. This would end up being the last time that Michelle Vanek was ever seen alive. Eric quickly continued on and summited Mount of the Holy Cross at 1:42 p.m., well behind schedule. He briefly called his wife and told her they were going to be late. He took a few photos for a couple who was also up on the summit at the same time. And then he turned around and began descending down the mountain. He was apparently on the summit for no more than 5 minutes. Because Michelle Vanek was moving so slowly, Eric expected to reconnect with her quickly. However, he couldn't find her on the route that he had instructed her to take, and so he began to desperately search. He climbed back to the spot where the two had separated, but he didn't see her there. Some of the hikers he had encountered on the summit reported that they actually heard him screaming her name. Eventually, Eric gave up on searching, found some cell service, and called 911 reporting Michelle Vanek missing. And within just a few short hours after that, the first wave of what would eventually be around 700 total searchers were climbing up Mount of the Holy Cross. The search for Michelle Vanek was extensive. The authorities did not hold back on utilizing every resource at their disposal. They used helicopters, search dogs, and like I said, hundreds of volunteers on foot searching for any sign of Vanek or her gear. But despite all this effort, they came up completely empty-handed. Because it was late September after all, the weather hindered the search, bringing temperatures below freezing and more than a foot of snow. After a week of searching, the effort to find Michelle Vanek was stepped up to a whole new level when on one single day, 336 volunteers scoured over the mountain and still found nothing. The next day, the search was officially called off. One of the search leaders was quoted saying, "In these cases, you find a candy wrapper, a dropped glove. This girl had ski poles. Where is that stuff?" A local volunteer said, quote, "I really felt like with this many people, if she was anywhere within reach, we could have found her." The search for Michelle Vanek was the largest search in Colorado state history. For the next 18 years, people were just left to speculate about what had caused her disappearance. And her case actually really stood out among all the other missing hiker cases, and this is because, well, to put it bluntly, her case had suspicious written all over it. But before I get into all that, let's examine the less suspicious theory into what happened. This theory is that Michelle Vanek simply got lost high up on the mountain and perished as a result. And absent of all the suspicious circumstances I'm going to talk about in just a second, this theory makes perfect sense. We know that she was by herself. We know that she had zero experience hiking at high altitude. We know that she was out of water and had barely any food left. We know that she had no overnight gear with her, and we know that there's a good chance she was suffering from altitude sickness. All of these factors point to a very obvious conclusion. Vanek got lost somewhere after separating with Eric, and then something went wrong, whether it be a fall or hypothermia or some other related issue, and she died as a result. Searchers even had a pretty reasonable idea of where she wandered off to. They believe that while attempting to link up with the Half Moon Trail, Vanek accidentally went west and headed off the ridgeline into the Cross Creek drainage. This is the area where a lot of the search for her was concentrated. But if that's what happened, then why the hell wasn't she found during the week of extensive searching that followed her disappearance? Like I said, it was the largest search in Colorado state history. And so this is where the foul play theory comes in. In addition to the lack of clues found on the mountain, there was a few suspicious things that happened during and after the search for Michelle Vanek. So apparently on the second day after her disappearance near the Cross Creek trailhead, searchers encountered a man who refused to talk to them and hid behind a tree, eventually just running away. And soon after this, blood was found in the snow nearby, and then they found a duffel bag containing a shotgun. And then apparently a day later, a suspicious tent was discovered with a person inside who refused to come out or respond. Later on, they did eventually make contact with the person that was inside the tent, and when they confronted him, he gave the name Peter Martin and didn't really give any other information or produce any identification. And lastly, probably the elephant in the room for a lot of you here is, what if Eric, her hiking partner, had lied about the story? He made it up and he was actually involved in Vanek's disappearance. Authorities definitely considered this a possibility, and they questioned Eric extensively. So extensively, in fact, that he eventually decided to stop cooperating, stop answering questions, and got himself an attorney. Now, Eric was a much more experienced hiker than Vanek was. He had hiked a number of 14ers in the past, and so they wondered why he took such an inexperienced hiker up the mountain with no overnight gear and no survival gear. Michelle Vanek's husband, Ben, was also questioned. Now, Ben was actually friends with Eric, and Ben insisted that there was no romantic relationship between Eric and his wife. He also backed up Eric and said, quote, "Eric doesn't have a malicious bone in his body." Now, if I had made this video 1 year ago, this would have been the end of the story. But I'm happy to say that it's not. And that's because over the past few months, authorities announced a discovery that may solve the mysterious case of Michelle Vanek once and for all. So, with that, I invite you on a virtual trip to an infamous place called the Angelica Couloir. Now, our trip here is free. It doesn't cost anything, but since you made it this far into the video, you have to hit the subscribe button. You got to do it, and that will cover your admission. In August of 2022, a father and son were bushwhacking north of the summit of Mount of the Holy Cross, just below a rocky slope that's called the Angelica Couloir. Now, like I just said there, they were bushwhacking. There's no trail. This area is very seldom traveled, and signs of other humans are basically non-existent. And so they must have been surprised, maybe even a little bit suspicious, when they discovered a singular weathered hiking boot. I'm not sure if the pair knew about Michelle Vanek's case, but something about the boot clearly stood out to them, because they actually decided to take some photos of it and report it to the authorities. It took searchers 2 tries, but they too were eventually able to locate this boot, and they collected it for forensic testing. And a short while later, this forensic testing would prove without a doubt that the boot belonged to Michelle Vanek. This was the first clue ever discovered in her case, and it came almost 2 decades after she disappeared. Now, my understanding is that since this discovery, the area around where the boot was found has obviously been searched for more clues, but nothing else has been discovered yet. So make no mistake, this case has not yet been closed. However, the discovery of the boot and its location are certainly a major break, because it suggests that Vanek's death was accidental and not the result of foul play. And let me explain that. So all of the suspicious people that searchers encountered and the shotgun that was found, all that stuff happened further down the mountain, nowhere close to where this boot was found. And in addition, the area around where the boot was found was not thoroughly searched at the time after her disappearance, and it's so rarely hiked by anybody, so it just makes sense that it took 18 years for someone to finally find a clue there. Scott Beebe, who is the president of Vail Mountain Rescue Group, believes that Michelle Vanek tried her best to follow Eric's instructions and to link back up with the Half Moon Trail. She initially went north, but then accidentally strayed to the east of the trail, leading her down into the Angelica Couloir. Scott Beebe believes that she missed reconnecting with Eric by about 10 minutes, which is super sad. 10 minutes made all the difference. And after she missed this reconnection, she wasn't able to find the trail and eventually perished somewhere on the mountain due to the rough conditions. The Angelica Couloir wasn't searched until the final day of the effort to find Vanek, and by that point, it had been covered in snow, which would have concealed any evidence. Now, once again, this case is not closed, and so the possibility certainly remains that more clues will be discovered. I think it's even likely, but for now, it looks as though the longtime suspicion of foul play in Michelle Vanek's case may no longer be warranted. She most likely was suffering from altitude sickness and simply had an accident on the mountain. Unfortunately, these things happen fairly consistently, but you never know, and I will definitely make an update video if and when more developments in this story occur. My heart goes out to Michelle Vanek and all of her friends and family, as well as the hundreds of people that helped search for her. I think they're kind of the unappreciated heroes in a lot of the stories that I tell on this channel. And with that said, I hope you keep her in your hearts and in your minds, and thank you for watching.